The sponsor of this video is Massdrop, the online group buy site. Use the link in the description to make an account, go get some cool tech for some good prices. So when most people think of a smartphone, they think of a couple major brands. We're talking Apple, Samsung, HTC, maybe LG, but no one's talking about Umi. I mean, Umi is just a random company. They're based out of China, and they're trying to get into the market overseas. There are companies over there making some pretty good phones, trying to expand their horizons. So they sent me over an Umi C1 to check out, and here are my first impressions. So I mentioned these are just my first impressions. I haven't actually had the phone for that long, but this is the Umi C1. And why should you even care about this device? Because it's only $140 off contract, and if you pay attention to the smartphone industry, $140 on contract is a good deal. Off contract, that's ridiculous. And it's also sporting things like a 5.5-inch 720p screen, dual SIM card support, running Android 4.4.2. So why isn't this a popular smartphone? Why isn't this everywhere if that all comes in for just $140? Here is my first impressions. Starting off with the unboxing experience of this, because that is important when you're trying to get into the mainstream market, and the Umi unboxing was pretty reminiscent of Apple. The whole box and then the layout of the box is pretty much like every other iPhone. They also included a cable similar to the OnePlus cable from the same manufacturer. That's a flat cable, you can see it right now, that is anti-tangle, and I think that's a really nice touch. But overall, the main focus is on the phone, because when you're coming at such a cheap price, like $140 off contract, you don't have the money to spend on extra accessories. Let's hop into some specs real quick. The C1 comes packed with mediocre specs for a great price. The brains is a 1.3 GHz Cortex A7 CPU, backed by a Mali 400 GPU with a gig of RAM, 16 GB of storage, an 8 megapixel camera, and that 5.5-inch IPS 720p display, all powered by a 2430 mAh battery. And it is removable. Now, most of those specs mean a whole lot of nothing because you're not familiar with the model types and whatnot, but what's important at a smartphone, especially at the $140 price point, is user experience, how it feels to actually use the phone. So starting with the very first time I picked it up, I was surprised at how light it is. I don't know why, but I guess since it's a big phone, I thought it would be a little bit heavier than it is. And you also, one of the first things you'll notice is the back. It's got like a perforated back, very reminiscent of the Samsung Galaxy S5. And Umi is telling me that it's the same material, it's called baby skin, as the 16GB OnePlus One. Now, it is smooth to the touch, and it's very nice to feel, but I never used the 16GB OnePlus One, so I can't actually confirm that, but that is what they are claiming. But I will be honest, I like the design of this device. I think it's better than a lot of flagship smartphones. It's attractive to look at and it's nice in the hand, so if you're just judging it by design, this is actually a really good option. Now, when you first start using it, you'll also notice that the screen is not Gorilla Glass. I'm not sure what material it is. It's definitely cheaper than Gorilla Glass to achieve that $140 price point. But at first, it will feel weird to use this device, but you'll get used to it, and it really doesn't make that much of a difference once you've been using it for a couple of days. But right at the start, initially when you start using the device, you'll be like, what is this material? But you get used to it. But really, the most important thing at this price point is software. We know the hardware, we know there's enough hardware. Look at the Apple iPhones. There's like very low-powered hardware in there, but it runs fantastically. Is the software on the Umi C1 good enough? Does it work well enough with the hardware? Well, it runs a heavily skinned version of Android 4.4.2, which I can tell you right now is not good at all. The skinned version that comes with it pre-installed and right out of the box is awful. The animations are bad, the icons are bad, the looks of it are bad, it's clunky, it's slow, it is really not a good experience. And the Umi C1 actually used to come pre-installed with 2 launchers, one of which was very close to stock Android. So with a click of a button, you could switch over to the OS that is basically stock Android. And that's a huge selling point, but it's no longer the case. That's what I thought I was going to get out of the box, but I looked for that option, it wasn't there. I tried every which way to root it, and nothing worked. So you're stuck taking the skinned version of Android that's on it and then modifying it as you wish. I mean, with some work, you can make it look closer to stock Android, or at least not so gimmicky and gross. But a phone is hardware and software, so I'm not changing too much. And no matter what I do change, there is still a little bit of lag and sluggishness when using this phone, so you can't get rid of that. Honestly, the specs are pretty decent, so I think it's the software slowing it down, not the hardware. I also tried rooting it, as I said, every single way I could with every single rooting client and doing it manually, but I've had zero success, so you are stuck with what comes. In a perfect world, this would come with basically stock Android or maybe CyanogenMod installed, and it would actually be a really good option for under $200. It would be like a cheaper OnePlus One, but still gets the job done, and people would flock over that. But I think the OS is the biggest step towards fixing this phone. I think it's the biggest disadvantage to buying it right now. On the bright side, my two complaints are really easily fixable if they are trying to go that route. Now, it might raise the price a little bit if they do that, but all they need to do is replace the screen glass with Gorilla Glass, which will probably raise the price, and then run a operating system closer to stock Android or maybe CyanogenMod or some other ROM that's just not so heavily skinned and closer to the Android experience that people want to see. I might be spoiled from using the OnePlus One for so long, which comes with CyanogenMod, but I cannot deal with heavily skinned versions of Android. It just feels like you're not even using Android. It feels like it's this weird OS that you don't even know. So they're fixable. Just use a different OS and replace the screen. It might raise the price, but I think they could have something really good here. They have the potential. I just think this was a little bit of a miss. But those are my first impressions after using this device. I'll have a review up of it eventually. I'm so busy right now with some Motorola stuff and then some Apple stuff coming up soon. But if you want to see a review of this, go ahead and subscribe. It'll be up in a month or maybe 2. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe for more content, and stay classy.